What's up, everybody? Happy morning time. It's your old screenwriting uncle buddy there, Jeffrey, here with a little crowd of what I like to consider pre-WGA All-Stars. Just people that I've gotten to know a little bit, doing what we do in our the sessions that we do on Zoom with where we have people come in, and like one of my favorites is this thing called Breaking Story, which is what we're here to do today, where we turn ourselves into a writer's room all together. So I'm going to lay out an idea to everybody here. Just to be fair, so you know, they heard it for the first time about 4 minutes ago. And I'm going to lay it out for all of you now. And then we're going to start breaking this thing up into questions and take a look at the process of how we do this thing. This is probably the first of three parts, but you know, that just depends on how well I remember to hit the brakes. So, this is the idea. And I'll admit this started as a feature, but I think there's a good way to translate this into a pilot and ultimately a series. The basic idea is this: a Black woman, probably in her early 30s, is working as a detective in a big city. She moves back to her small town to take the job as sheriff, sort of a reverse Seven. And when she moves back, the town is bedeviled by a series of attacks by a monster, which is a giant X in our story. That you hear soon. What is the nature of that monster? Um, so the town is bedeviled by these attacks. She is the new, sheriff in town. She's Chief Brody. She's Roy Scheider from Jaws. She doesn't want to flounder and have something bad happen right here at the beginning of her watch. So what does she do? She starts to stake out. She tries to track and find this monster. She ultimately discovers that this thing seems to be making a pattern, nearly completely encircling her childhood home. Staking out her childhood home and sort of reliving some of her memories of the past because she grew up here after all. She is shocked to discover that the monster, who comes and attacks and who she fights back against and ultimately kills, is actually her long MIA father, long believed dead in Afghanistan as a soldier. Apparently, what's actually happened to him is he's been taken off and sort of, Tuskegee'd in a series of secret experiments, in an attempt to create a perfect sort of super soldier monster who would, without any sort of moral problems and with great plausible deniability, could go out in the world and do things that we can't have regular soldiers do. He must have escaped and encircled his way back home, and now he's found his daughter. Heartbroken, she tracks the bad people who did this to her dad, finds the facility, penetrates the facility, is attempting to take the place down when she's captured, and they put her through the same process that they did her dad. And weeks later, she's about a third of the way through that process when she finds her opportunity to break out, overpowers people, gets away, burns the place down behind her, kills everyone and everything inside it, and walks away as the one and only leftover, uh, remnant of this surreptitious program, like the one pseudo monster out there walking around, with still two-thirds of her humanity on her side. Into what future we would only learn in season two. So we're going to talk about the pilot portion of this mostly, with everybody. And there's a little structure thing I just like to do for pilots. I don't think pilots have a structure, but I do think all pilots do sort of the same things. And that is usually typing live. There's a genre open, that sort of sets the stakes of the thing and sets the tone of the show and lets us know what we're up for. And then we live with the character for a little while and the stasis of that character. And then there's this new emotion, this new thing that happens that sends them on a course. And then the problem that arises necessitates, let's see if I can spell this. Yay! The problem that arises necessitates change. To beat it, they make the change, they attack the problem, and now, for rest of season and series, there's a new me to deal with. The other things that you want to always get across in the pilot are like tone, theme, settings, and the other characters. Why character and characters? I'm just a believer that there's always a point of view character. Even in an ensemble, there's an eyes and ears character who we experience it through. And I just find that it's easier and more fun to break down story through that person's eyes and let the other characters be there to sort of support the main plot and support that character's journey. And if you look at pilots, no matter what the characters that we would love become, that's kind of what they do. So anyway, I think we were just, and anybody, hey, hi everybody. Sorry to monologue and filibuster there. And please jump in as usual anytime you want. I think that the first couple of things, what's up, Nick? Hey.
Great. I was just
Oh, you
wondering if
took me seriously.
yeah, I did. I did. I'll wait my turn if you want me to. But
Not, not in the least.
I was really thinking about like the fact of what is this town's character, and I thought that the setting of this town would give us a good idea about some of the tone. So, in other words, was the state of this town, is it a dying town? Is that why she left? And when she's coming back, is there like a new wave of crime? So, kind of looking at the personality of that town and how it personally motivated her either to leave or to come back.
Yep, I can see what you're saying. It is a good place to start. I think it'll help, like you said, it'll help us be a conduit to figuring out some more about the character. So if anybody's got town stuff, I want to get to everybody in a quick. I kind of want to. Christopher, are you about town stuff, and Shelley and Ashley? Or are you something else?
More about motivation stuff, like the
Okay.
why.
All right. I'm gonna stick on this town thing for
I've,
just a second. Go. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
I've got
town.
I'm
I've got a
town. I
pitch for
love
the
it.
town. Yeah.
What you got, Christopher?
Um,
Oh,
yeah, no, I had sort of a pitch for the town that it's also tied to the emotion as
mm,
well.
nice.
And to her emotion, because I think one of the most important things that you raised here is, the idea of her coming back to this town to be sheriff. And like the thing that sort of clicked for me listening is, does she feel like she abandoned this town the way her father abandoned her in a sort of moment of that it needs her, like the way that he, the way that she needed him.
Right.
And, so I think that if that's a potential for emotion, then I think that then suggests that, yeah, this town is sort of being rocked by sort of a new wave of crime that could also potentially provide for other like case of the week episodic stuff in addition to this overarching uh monster
Yep.
issue.
All right. I love okay, so when I was a kid, I grew up in this town for a little while, from like third grade to eighth grade. We lived like outside the town, but it was called Accident, Maryland, because like it was so small that they left it off all the maps, and so they just called it Accident. And it always just reminded me of this place, like this, like in my mind it's really one of those like John Cougar Mellencamp like rural small towns, you know what I mean, integrated like in a way that like Indiana and a lot of the places can be, but also not that everybody's having the same experience. Shelley and then Ashley. What's up, Shelley?
So I was thinking the reason she left town would be grief because her dad, like it was a bad memory. Like, so you leave the thing that makes you feel sad all the time, like her dad's gone. Well, perhaps she came back because of grief. Someone important that still lived there died. And now she thinks guilt because if I had been there, then maybe it wouldn't have happened. So she goes back to try to fix the thing that wasn't really her fault. And then in turn finds this other big problem that turns out to be her dad.
I think that's a great external trigger, that there's like stuff going on, and that like it feels like we're all going to start leaning toward a place where it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, small town, semi-rural, uh integrated, you know um uh but also like fallen on some tougher times. And it's almost like, it's like, I wonder if it's an external event that draws her back, or more of an internal thing where it's like, not to get weird, but it's like, what, there's a great Cheers episode where Woody is talking about like he's on the phone with his parents. He's like, I don't know why I left the farm. I know that's what's wrong with this country. Everybody leaves to go to the city. And it just felt really bad. It just reminded me of that. Anyway, let's keep going through it. Ashley, what's on your mind?
I was thinking about the father and
Mm,
why that he comes back, like he comes back as a monster and he attacks this town. There has to be, for me, I think there needs to be something there that maybe there was like some racism or some history with the family that he was mistreated in that town.
hmm
Um, yeah, I just think there needs to be a reason why he's specifically attacking this town that he's from, that the main character investigates and finds out like there's some history with her father in that town, some negative history.
Yeah, that's interesting because it went like what it suggests is like there's this possibility, and again, this is just a possible construct, but bear with me. One day in Accident, Maryland, on the school bus that ride that was 45 minutes long, going to school, we passed like a burned out cross on the lawn, in like I guess what must have been like 1979 or 80. Um, and I just wonder if it's like, okay, town, prosperous, tough times hit, one side, let's say, blames the other, uh and leads to you know, big problems in little place. um and it's like the dad was part of that as a younger man, joined military in part to try to get away from that, held that anger inside, late, you know, that latent anger. When process began, it informed his, you know, ideas. I think it's still like, I think his main reason to go home is it's like a homing beacon of his humanity that remains. You know what I mean? Like I think he feels like what's left of him is like that's home. You know what I mean? Like I want to go there. But you're right about the attacks. Like in my mind, the attacks were circumstantial, like Frankenstein's monster when he's like out there in the town and you know burnt, you know, gets burned, and the little girl in the well and all, you know, like all that stuff where it's like circumstantial. But if it's latent, sort of like just a construct to keep in mind. If dad's attacks, not his return, but his attacks, are a latent feeling about the town and its divides itself, we can use that exact thing to frame the lead coming home. It's like, you know, you get a mayor who sees a divided town and recruits or, you know, or tries to, uh, a big city detective who got away from their town. You know what I mean? Anyway, enough of me. Anything else, Ashley?
I do think there needs to be a reason that she comes back because like being from a small town that you don't like, I don't think you go back out of the goodness of your heart. I feel like there has to be something that pulls her back.
And it's probably not just one thing, right? It's
Yeah,
always like multiple things. So it's like, you know, nostalgia, like the sadness of dad, you know what I mean? The recruitment and the town needs you, countered by what did town ever do for me? You know what I mean?
right.
Um, which I mean I could be, you know, I never had that experience, but conjecturing, I would imagine. I'd like to hear from everybody. Um, but yeah, like it's like I don't think it's ever just one reason, you know what I mean? And it's like, and then there's probably something personal or professional. I wasn't meaning to wink at everybody there. Professional going on in the city. You know what I mean? Because I really believe as a history student, one of the things that you learn first is there's like everybody looks for one reason, but there's never one reason for anything. Like there's always a million of them. Ken.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a pitch for the town and I have a pitch for what draws her back. Um, so my pitch for the town that I feel like ties up a lot of the dangling ends right now is that it essentially started out as a military town. So we put a military base. It could be a research base or just a general base, just kind of at a remove to the town. It's what was kind of like the seedling for the town. It's what the town grew up around. Is that it's where like folks on the base, you know,
Yeah.
might have their families, or more typically, like it's where the civilian population that works on the base would live because it's the military personnel only on the base. Um, and maybe her father starts out, you know, he's born in the town, he grows up in the town. This is a multi-generational thing that the base has been there for years. And you know, it always became the thing of, you know, you can, if there's no other jobs in town, you can always go work as a civilian employee on the base.
Mhm.
And then eventually he, you know, through his association there, he joins the military.
Mhm.
Um, and then maybe the base go is deactivated, and so the town has kind of a certain amount of like built up wealth and revenue and industry, and but without the base there to drive it, it's been like a decades long decline. So you get that sort of, you know, cracks in the streets kind of thing. Um, and then they've secretly reactivated the base, or they just straight up reactivated the base. That's where the facilities are, where they've been doing the experimentation. Um, and because and he's just really good at escaping. So the
Yeah.
escapes are unintentional, or he escapes once and then they're like, well, why not just test him on the civilian population of the town, because the military is
Right.
naughty. And they kind of see the town as being like theirs anyway.
Mhm.
So that's my pitch for why the town exists and
Yep.
why he would be
I
back there.
I really like this like bedroom community for nearby base. And a couple of my
Hmm.
favorite, like when I was you know, the part of growing up, the two different sections of growing up where we were more in Baltimore than in the rural place. Like my parents grew up around that area, and Fort Meade is there. And like my mother was one of those people that they came to recruit in high school to go be like a language translator at one of those alphabet agencies, you know. And it's like that's what they do. And like even through like one of my best friends in high school got recruited and became like an Arabic language expert, like in the early 90s or whatever, and is still there. Yeah, it's an interesting,
Okay.
it is interesting, and they do like to pluck from these towns, and like especially the sort of the gene pool, so to speak, of like thought. I like it. All right, you got something quick for what
Thank you.
draws her back, and then we'll go to
Yeah, yeah,
Joey.
yeah. Yeah, and it's got a little bit of a, like Stranger Things, you have kind of a little bit of that, but not quite. Good Omens season one, you have a little bit of that, but not quite. So it's a little bit of a spin on that, kind of taking what those do with it, where there just happens to be a base nearby, but actually ties it to the town.
Yeah.
My pitch for her is so she grows up in this environment. Dad, as he's working at the base, kind of gradually grows more distant. Maybe she loses her mom, um, but um, but I like the idea of she grows up there. She goes to elementary school there. She goes to high school there. Her interest in criminal justice starts out there. Maybe she even, uh, um, is kind of like a kid reporter version of the sheriff's department. So she's the kid that was always hanging around the sheriff's department and, kind of helping them with basic administrative things and going and getting them donuts or whatever. So she's always had this interest in law enforcement.
Hmm.
Um, Also during high school, there's a brother and sister in town, and the brother had always had a crush on her. The brother had always thought that he would marry her and settle down there. She just never really had any interest in him. She liked him as a friend, but she was never interested in him. However, his 1 year younger sister was her first kiss.
Mm.
Um, and so before she moves back to the town, she's always thought of her, the sister, as the one that got away. In her apartment in the city, she's got a picture of the two of them at summer camp or whatever, and she just kind of like looks at it mistily. When she's in the city, she's a low rung member of the city police force, but she doesn't really have a lot of camaraderie. She feels kind of socially isolated. She's never really invited to kind of go out to the cop bar or whatever. So the irony that when she was around a small number of people, she felt a wide connection, but now that she's in the city, surrounded by, a
Yep.
huge number of people, she feels completely alone.
Yeah.
So she gets the call and she thinks about it briefly, but it gives her that tie to the sheriff's department. They think she's gone off to become this big city cop, and so she's the perfect person, since the town sheriff has just been killed by this monster when he went to investigate, and none of the deputies are like, up to the challenge. You know, and she's, you know, the kind of small town kid that went off and made it big in the big city. She's the perfect person to call in for the sheriff's department to take the sheriff's role.
Yep. All right. So I want to get to everybody, but I also like we need to, you know, I don't want to. We're going to spend a lot of time on this thing. I think here's what I really like. But I want to start talking about her for a second. I'd like to get through her before we cross over into what part 2 will be, which is more about the actual like pilot stuff that we'll need. But this is all necessary and important. It's like, but I think some of the things that we concede opening are city cop going home to be sheriff, like less than ideal relationship with hometown, partially dad dead, partially town's nature, partially the remaining family, friends, or whoever that would give her the adjective being around. What's her stasis? I think she's just like literally now moving back. I feel like this I saw in the chat so a bunch of stuff I really agree with, where it's like what happens, like, okay, she's not gonna go, but the compounding factor of a final piece makes her think she's being pushed this way. The simplest thing to do, right? And I like simple sometimes, but it's like the simplest thing to do is this. She's in the city. First we do a killer moment in the small town. Monster. Then we do small town fallout. We meet a few people besides her for our world. And then we do going to visit her with an offer. And I just, again, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna get to you in just a second, and please, but it's like, I feel like and again, it's TV, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, what do you want to do? You want to have multiple things that are going to lead to multiple future stories tugging her back here at once. And I saw the stuff in the chat about mom dead or a brother dead or this, you know, something like that. I wonder if we don't do the Frasier, and it's like mom has become sick and is a burden on other sister or other brother who has kids and this and that and this and that. And she's lured back in part to come back to and live at mom's, like they're, you know, essentially literally like moving back to her childhood home, which I think would be weird. I'd never thought of that before, but like there's, you know, and again, not to get too Frasier about it, but it's like, if she's in, and I think it's like this, like in my ideal world, and then I swear I'll get to everybody. She's in the city and there's something there that's awry. You know what I mean? Maybe she's unhappy with the department. Maybe she's unhappy with the relationship. Maybe she's unhappy with just the style of living. And it turns out that she actually misses the thing that she shit upon so thoroughly when she was living it. You know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff. But something there, like there's a problem in the city. Then whoever the mayor is of this town, or somebody who's maybe running for mayor or whatever that it is, something along those lines, is either a friend of hers from high school or an acquaintance or somebody she had a relationship with, or a family friend who's like older than her, but you know, like was connected to the family very well, and like comes to basically say, I am trying to do this for the town, and I think you'd be an important part of it. There's an undercurrent of ugliness that swept over our little place that maybe seeing a hometown person who made good come back would help undo, like would help contribute to, like you could be a role model too. And she's dead set against it. You know, like despite number one, despite number two, she's still like not interested in this. And then the call comes from the brother. I'm underwater with mom. Like you're not around, you don't see it. But like since last Christmas when you were home, she's gotten 18 times worse. She's bumping into stuff. She's gonna break a hip. She's gonna do this. She's gonna do that. And it's like, you know, and then to me, going back, if it was a mom or a brother or something like that, like I get dead brother, I get dead mom. I feel like the living one gives us some stuff to do, and also maybe another person we care about to die. You know what I mean? But anyway, so Joey, what's on your mind? Sorry to blow that out of the water. Joey, Jacob, Charisse, Ursula, Christopher. What's up, Joey?
What's up? I might yap a bit based on everything that you just said. Hopefully,
I know
I'll
your
find it.
style. That's why you're here.
Anyways,
Yap away.
um, to me, it's very important that it is a Black woman returning to her rural town,
Mhm.
as not the same, but as an Asian kid that returned to a rural town. I don't like my town because it's a primarily white demographic that I experienced a lot of isolationism and racism from growing up.
Mhm.
And because of that, I think it's a very important piece that she doesn't like the town at all. And she feels, whether it be from outsiders, not outsiders, but outsiders to her within this town, feeling that same resentment towards her as she does to them. She struggles to become a sheriff that cares for other people throughout the story, that cares for this town. And in a way, relating to her father, is she attempting to find solace and peace and forgiveness for this town, whereas her father, this monster, maybe never did. Um, I just think, to me, that's important, depending on obviously where you set the town. But yeah.
Yep. And I think that choice was probably largely just coming from spending 98% of my life with my wife, you know what I mean? And to these things, but it's like, yeah, I totally get it. I mean, I don't firsthand get it, but I totally understand. And I'd love to hear about that dynamic and how it should go. I feel like you got more.
Yeah.
Oh, I could be wrong. I just
No,
didn't
no, no.
know this. I just
I
didn't want to
think
cut you off, you know what I mean?
no, no, no. Yeah. I do have a little bit more in terms of what makes it unique is, okay, does she resent her father for forcing her to stay in that town?
Mm,
As I said to my mom, why are we staying here when we're treated like this? Uh, and is that something that she has to deal with, seeing her father as a legitimate monster this time around
mm,
and having to forego her past hatred for him to try and save him and try and save the town? She's
mm-hmm,
fighting against everything within her own mind.
mm-hmm,
It says you should not. That's why she left in the first place. She doesn't want to be bothered with the town. She doesn't want to help this town. Like, fuck these people.
mm-hmm.
She's forced to come back, and she's forced to, help them out in a way. And she has to grow to kind of appreciate that, and or at least learn to forgive and forget to some degree. To some degree. But yeah,
And I mean, but that's a long journey, like through the
yeah.
thing. I think it's like, I, I, I definitely, I really like a lot of what you're saying, and I totally understand the point of view that it's coming from. I wonder if there's a combination of things. Like to me, it's just never the one thing, but I think this is huge.
Mm.
I think like one thing we have to nail down before really breaking down what the pilot is specific, like not specifically like there was one event, but specifically the emotional thing, the emotional arc of her like being in this town and leaving town. And I think what you're talking about is this. It's like she resents being there as a child. Ultimately, has to even blame her parents. Like, why? Um, Grows up, leaves, first chance she gets in a new environment, with a even more, with even more slightly improved, societal chance, or like or treatment. She flourishes and becomes an important part of this new community, which then inspires a faction back home to want to recruit her to help heal the town from issues, provide role model. But then all I can think of going through that is but then there's also this other agenda. And now it's like, bear with me, but it's like she leaves town. She leaves people behind. Those people feel what she did, but couldn't go. But one or more of them has been investigating, like, um, you know, like, uh, you know, the town and the dark side of it and finding truths that could lead to this military base. And, you know, the function of the town in some bigger world. None of this has anything to do with the pilot. And I'm so sorry, but it's like, you know, it's like just trying to build this world. And again, it could all be garbage, but it's like she leaves. These others who are left behind begin to dig into the very problems that caused her to leave because they have them too. But then they're digging into them, they catch on to something bigger and weirder. And so it's like in recruitment is also the hope that bringing her here will help, you know, crack the case of this bigger problem. And it's like symptom, dad, his program, these monster attacks. And they should be condensed, by the way. Like now, if there's a base in this town, the timeline of these attacks is condensed timeline, and there's other people looking too. Anyway, getting closer to something. Jacob, what's on your mind? Sorry.
All right, so as soon as I heard about her dad, I think it's really important that the main character is also ex-military, like before she was a cop. Like I think in her early 20s, she signed up for the military to like try to repair what was damaged between her and her father, but she got dishonorably discharged for disobeying orders or arguing with superior officers. She doesn't just do what she's told, she like, you know, has an issue with authority clearly, and it made the gap between her and her father even worse. Probably also like embarrassed him if this is a military town, like everyone in this town is military for because it exists like for this base.
Right.
Like after that, she and her dad was like, no, no. And then after that, she becomes a cop.
All right, try this out. Dad worked at base. Not super high level, but not a grunt either. Probably in charge of like security for the place or something. Not the science, but like, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Just not the science. Pride a bit in what goes on, but discovered the dark side. Forget the whole other side of it, that Andre side of it that we were talking about earlier, and just go with this idea that it was just a matter to take him of convenience. You know what I mean? And it's like, but discovered the dark side and was sent on a mission from which he never returned, you know, really brought into the pool of these victims. Anyway, and then it's like, I there's one thing I just wonder. I hear you about this thing. She goes into the military and she gets this this disciplinary thing, or she gets this thing. It's like I wonder if it's more of a stab like this. She joins military, you know, military, at 18, to escape, and ultimately she thinks pay for college. You know,
Yes.
dad, so proud. You know what I mean? Like this is like, I mean, following in the family business. She excels, she's decorated and honored. She's offered to stay and rise. Anytime a man writes stray instead of stay, you worry about Freudian implications there. Oh shit. She's offered to stay and rise. She excels, she's decorated and honored, she's offered to stay and rise. She quits. You know what I mean? She wants to do her own thing, and not work for this corporation, you know. Anyway, just a thought, but it's like it just to me it just spins the power dynamic on that thing over to her, and makes, you know, it's like, what is her renegade action? Well, it wasn't disobeying orders. She was so good that they wanted her, and her renegade action was to say no thank you. Anyway, but I love that. Charisse, Ursula, Christopher, what's up, Charisse? Charisse,
Hey.
Ursula, Christopher, you get in here for dinner. Sorry. I love, that's my favorite. Sorry.
We did it. We did it. We all had flashbacks.
Yes.
A couple of things. One, the town thing, and I think I put it in the chat, but the idea that there's something else going on in this town using that American history loveliness of Black towns being put underwater, that could be how this town was integrated, that the sort of sister town to it that was all Black citizens became one of those towns that's underwater. Some of those
Forced
Black
integration,
families,
you
right.
know?
So
Yeah.
some of those families ended up there. So there's already this sort of underlying tension within the town and the history of the town that no one talks about, by the way. And so that could be a whole element in and of itself. I think that also could open up a supernatural element to this, a sort of haunting that maybe the experiments were done, the experiments were sort of like, very cut and dry scientific, but then there's this other element that gets mixed into it that could bring about even more monsters. And I think, what was the other thing? Oh, to draw her back, I feel like we need to see the sheriff of that town be one of the people offed. Like maybe that's the one that we really see at the beginning. So that it makes it, or maybe she's even back in town by that time. She comes back to see the mom. This happens, and
Okay, she's in town visiting mom, brother, getting pressured to participate. Murder of the sheriff. Before she leaves, they try to recruit. She goes back to city. X happens, she feels the responsibility to go, mostly for herself. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, that's, and I think that maybe I like the idea. I think Renita had it, that it was like, or maybe somebody else, talking about the protectiveness of that the father, the monster, is actually like protecting them. So maybe, part of the 1, 2, 3 of bringing her back is also that the mom is like, the mom claims she recognizes the monster, which, they think maybe mom is rebels, and that would then sort of pique her interest, be like, well, what if, this is my father who was my hero.
I think she completely dismisses it until she figures it out. And I do think it's quick at the end of the pilot. But yeah, I think it's great that the mom calls it. It's like, what's he doing? He's visiting his wife. You know what I mean? I mean, he's been away forever, and he goes back and he visits his wife. I think there's like 7 things in what you just said that are absolutely there and genius. What I want to do is Ursula, Christopher, and Shelley, and then I want to wrap up this segment, come back. We're going to pull the greatest hits of this into the pilot structure and then fill in the blanks specifically about our lead and specifically about the nature of this monster. Ursula, what you
got? Okay, so I actually grew up in one of these small towns you're talking about, and I actually left. And yeah, I'm actually a military veteran, so I'm gonna give a couple. I want to say a couple of things about the town, actually. First of all, death is not going to make a person come back to this town. Somebody dying isn't going to make me come back. I'm just keeping it real, being honest.
What about the
I left
guilt
this town for a
of a sick
reason.
mom? Would the guilt of a sick mom work or no?
That will work, but somebody dying isn't going to make me. I'll probably come to a funeral, but I will leave when the funeral is over. That's
Yep.
it. I'm not going to move back home because someone died. That's just not my problem. I left that town for a reason. And I want to talk about the reason for her leaving. So I think a lot of people don't know what it's like to grow up in a small Black town. There's not a military base in a small Black town. Maybe in the next some cities over, but a small Black town doesn't have resources, which is why people leave. There's drugs, there's drinking, there's people hanging out. There's, what I'm saying? This is a small Black town in America. So I mean, the ideas sound good, but I actually lived 18 years in one of these places.
So
So
what about one of these like
um
sort of mixed towns? You know what I mean? Like, is that like, did you have any experience with that? Would people just segregate like within a forced
right.
segregated
I'm
town,
gonna
just
right.
resegregate themselves naturally?
Yeah, I'm gonna to get to the quote unquote white part of town, there you have to cross a railroad track. So or you have to go past a certain city limit. You know what I'm saying? So And that's what cities actually on the map, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So small black town isn't necessarily on the map. You have to look really closely to know the name of this small black town. But if you cross a certain point threshold, you can see where it turns into the quote unquote better part of town. So that could be in a pilot somewhere if you want. I'm just describing the town since we're talking about the town here.
Yep.
Also with who the monster is to her, if when she moves away, the town itself can be the monster as well. So she's fighting two monsters. Whatever monster she comes back to, the town itself is actually a monster as well. It's not a physical form monster, but to a person that grew up in something like this and leaves, there's something about just the town itself, not necessarily people, but maybe the atmosphere to a child makes this town a monster. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And also the fact that the mom, what you said about like her being angry at the parents is another reason why. Why are we in this situation? This is what are reasons why people leave and don't come back. Why are we in this situation? How come parents didn't do better to have me grow up in a better environment? How come we're struggling as Black people in America? How come you couldn't do better for yourself so I wouldn't have to start from zero myself? Like, these are reasons why people leave and don't come back or join the military, and because they don't know how to find better in other ways or not exposed to better. So this town itself is a monster to her. Also, she's also fighting a physical monster, but the town itself is the monster too.
Yeah.
So she's been fighting that monster since childhood. You know what I'm saying? So she's not, you know, it's not unfamiliar to her to fight monsters. It's just that the monster itself changed. And now you're asking her to come back when she escaped one monster, and now you're asking her to come back to fight two monsters instead of just one. So, and also, I'm sorry, I wrote something else down. Yeah, it's basically just about the town because I hear like a lot of ideas about the town, but the town itself doesn't have resources to have a military. But I don't know if you guys have seen the movie They Clone Tyrone. That's what a black town looks like. That's what a small black town in America looks like. You know what I mean? So
Let me try this geography for you real quick, not to break it just for 1 second. It's like, okay, there's a military base like 20 miles away, right? There's the white town that these, that like the other town maybe got flooded, maybe it didn't, whatever, but it's like they got incorporated at some point into this, little, and this white town is like a bedroom community for that base, and then within it is the smaller black town you really gotta look to find on the map, or the unmapped part, you know what I mean? Or the or the unlisted part. And that's where and it's like, so today, you tell me, Ursula, whether this, you tell me the right version of this based on what your experience is, but it's like, if she were to be recruited to come back, it feels like she'd be recruited to come back by somebody who knew her and lives in this black part of town and is really trying to do things to combat what's going on, how the best that any of these people can, but they're running at least on this idea. And that recruiting her to come back would be not like, number one, it would be great, like, boost of enthusiasm for the town to show people like, hey, like, look at all the things we can do. Number two, she surreptitiously wants her help tracking this problem that she's perceived with this, maybe monster. I don't know. But I think we found our voice.
I said a childhood best friend. Something happens to a childhood best friend, somebody they're really, really close with, like extremely close with, is maybe one reason that would get her to think of coming back. This is somebody she cares for, they've gone through the struggle, grew up together. She's saying she escaped. She left, went to a HBCU somewhere because HBCUs are what Black people know to go to when you want to get out of wherever. But that friend didn't. That friend, she left a friend behind. She left somebody behind that she really cared for.
Yeah.
And maybe
how does that person feel?
About the town?
About being left behind. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, that person felt like there was no way out. So they had to stay in that town and do what they had to do. Everybody doesn't see a way out for them. You grew up in an environment where you're not exposed to things that other people are exposed to. So if a person doesn't see, they haven't been taught that there are other things. Not even this lady that's coming back, the main character. She wasn't exposed to that either, but she just wanted to know or thought that there was something better out there. So she had the courage to pursue whatever it is when she left. And when she left, she was like, I'm never coming back to this place. I'm not gonna do it. But other people don't have that get up and go, that gumption, that I can make it out of this small town. My mom grew up here. I'm gonna grow up here. My kids are gonna grow up here. You see what I'm saying? Like some people have that mentality. So maybe a friend, something happens to a really close childhood friend. I can see that being a reason why she comes back, but she doesn't care about the small town.
Yeah.
She left for a reason. So there has to be something emotional to bring her back. A death isn't gonna do it. I'm sorry.
No,
Somebody
I get
dumb
that.
isn't gonna do it.
Yep.
It's not gonna do it.
So two questions. The friend, man or woman? You know what I mean?
I think it needs
Probably
to be
a guy. You think it was? That's a good one.
I
I
see
don't know if
Vernita
it's,
thinking too. I see Vernita, Charisse, and Ursula all like working this through.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't
You're
thought
muted,
about man or
Vernita.
woman yet.
Yeah, I just, it's something to think about, and we can get into it because I think we should break soon for the next piece.
Yeah, it should be a
Ursula.
woman. Just want to say it's got to be a sisterhood.
Yeah.
Tied to that. Yeah,
because
has to
otherwise
be.
you're going to imply something. Yeah. And then
I'm done. Sorry. Okay, I'm done. That was my thing.
so okay, good. And then as far as the so the friend left behind, is she just living the small life of small town, or is she the person back there trying to do things? You know what I mean? Like, is she trying to make the town better? Is she the recruitment person, or
I think both.
you know what I mean?
I think both. Like maybe she's the person who is outwardly constantly trying to better life there, but maybe she also secretly drinks her evenings away. Like, I think there has to be something dark going on with her, even though she tries, but also that she's just constantly hitting against a brick wall of trying to make things good.
So we should definitely break, but what about this? I don't mean to, this could be completely wrong, right? But it's like, okay, monster attack in the town. And then it's now I just want to call her Ursula. It's like we'll just say
Actually, I love that.
She has to go home for a funeral. While she's here, the family stuff, the town stuff, the friend's project here, and wish to recruit her. The rejection. She goes home to the city. We see the city problem too. Though it's mostly good. I don't want her to be I don't want her to be shitty here too, but I do want there to be some issue. The friend is the next victim of the monster. She goes back. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, does that I want to call it the Ursula test, you know? Christopher and Shelley, and then we'll break and we'll just do a part 2. What's up?
Oh, I mean, that's a lot of incredible stuff there to absorb. So I feel like coming in at the moment is almost like changing the subject. But,
Sorry. Do you want to pick
yeah.
back up? I mean, Shelley, do you feel the same way, or what you got, Shelley?
I was gonna say, so the impetus to come back, maybe she 100% has no intention of staying. Maybe she is there for a funeral of an actual family member, something that she has to come home for, and she is definitely not staying. And then she reconnects with a friend, and then she actually physically sees, like, in the distance, and she think like they're out drinking or whatever, and she's walking back home and she sees her dad and she's like, that is not what I just saw. And the mystery is what drives her back. I mean, because he's presumed dead, but missing.
That's an interesting moment.
This is a small thing to add, but I feel like the last time she was in town was like for her dad's funeral. So like he hasn't been here since her dad died also.
That's interesting because she should be, she spends those early moments clocking those big changes. All right. So let's do this. Let's break here for just a minute. And then we'll come back for part 2. But thank you, everybody. And we will pick back up as soon as I figure out how to stop recording. So.